I tapped play and heard my name, not once, but 6 times, spoken in that tone people use when they think you'll never hear. My sister's voice dripped with something I'd never caught before, calculated malice wrapped in sugar. She didn't know I'd listen, didn't know I'd remember what I left on her laptop last Christmas. And she sure as hell didn't know I'd make sure her next investor meeting started with my voice. Sometimes the universe hands you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. This accidental voice memo was my golden ticket to justice. My name is Layla Monroe, and 3 months ago, I was a senior interior designer at Whitmore & Associates in Saltbridge, with a corner office overlooking the harbor, and clients who actually returned my calls. Now I'm 32 years old, sleeping in my childhood bedroom in Oakage, Vermont, staring at the same water-stained ceiling I memorized during high school finals. The couch literally sank when I sat down, not metaphorically. It actually groaned and dipped as if it were swallowing me whole. Mom had warned me about the broken spring, but I'd forgotten. Everything in this house seemed broken in ways that nobody bothered to fix anymore. Coffee? Mom asked from the kitchen doorway, her voice carrying that particular brand of forced cheer she'd perfected since my return. She held out a mug, my old college one, with the chipped handle and faded university logo. Thanks, I said, taking it and noting how she avoided direct eye contact. We had developed this careful choreography over the past 2 weeks, dancing around the obvious. Her successful daughter had come crawling home. The living room hadn't changed. Same beige walls, same family photos arranged in chronological order on the mantel. There was 8-year-old me, gap-toothed and grinning, next to Camille at 12, already possessing that camera-ready smile. The photos told our story in increments: Camille's high school valedictorian speech, my college graduation, her wedding, my first design award, her business launch. Somewhere along the timeline, the narrative had shifted. I'd stopped being the promising one. Camille called, Mom said, settling into Dad's recliner. They are driving up from Boston today. She's excited to see you. I highly doubted that. My sister's excitement usually came with conditions and carefully orchestrated photo opportunities. But I smiled and nodded, playing my part in the family theater. The front door burst open 2 hours later, and suddenly the house filled with noise. Camille's twins, Mason and Madison, because of course she'd given them matching M names, thundered through the hallway. Her husband, Richard, followed, arms loaded with designer luggage that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to be. And then there was Camille herself, stepping through the doorway, as if she were walking onto a stage. She'd cut her hair into one of those severe bobs that only worked on women with cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. Her outfit screamed casual wealth, the kind of deliberately simple clothes that cost a fortune. Layla, she rushed forward, enveloping me in a cloud of expensive perfume. Oh my God, look at you. You look. She paused, her eyes scanning me with surgical precision. Tired. You look so tired, sweetie. The backhanded concern was pure Camille. I forced my smile wider. Just adjusting to the country air. Of course, and I'm sure this whole situation has been so stressful. She squeezed my shoulders, her manicured nails digging in slightly. But you know what? This could be exactly what you needed. A reset, a chance to reevaluate. Richard appeared at her elbow, offering a practiced handshake and professional distance. Sorry to hear about Whitmore, he said. Tough market out there. Downsizing, I corrected automatically. They kept the partners and let everyone else go. Right, his smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, I'm sure something will turn up. Dinner that night felt like a job interview I hadn't applied for. Camille dominated the conversation, regaling us with stories about her latest sustainable design project, name-dropping clients and publications with casual precision. Every accomplishment was punctuated with a glance in my direction, checking to make sure I was listening. "The Portland Tribune wants to do a feature," she said, passing the salad. "Can you imagine? They are calling me Vermont's Green Pioneer." She laughed. That tinkling sound she'd perfected in college. "I keep telling them it's not that innovative. I mean, sustainable design has been around forever." "Right, ILA." The question hung in the air like a trap. "Right," I agreed, remembering my senior thesis on eco-friendly urban spaces, the one she'd asked to look at for inspiration years ago. "Speaking of work," Mom interjected, "ILA has an interview next week with East Wind Concepts." I shot her a look. I'd mentioned it in passing, not as a dinner announcement. "East Wind?" Camille's eyebrows rose. "Oh, they are nice. Small, but nice. Actually, I know someone there. Let me put in a word for you." "That's not necessary," I said. "Don't be silly. What's family for?" She pulled out her phone, already typing. "I'll email Helen in HR. We went to that women's leadership conference together last year." My stomach tightened. The last thing I needed was Camille's involvement, but refusing would look ungrateful. I forced myself to thank her, even as warning bells chimed in my head. After dinner, I escaped to the porch, needing air that didn't smell like Camille's perfume. The Vermont twilight painted everything in shades of purple and gold, deceptively peaceful. Behind me, I could hear my family through the open window. The kids were watching TV. Richard and Dad were discussing baseball. Mom and Camille were laughing about something. They sounded happy, complete, like a puzzle with all its pieces perfectly aligned, except for the one that didn't quite fit. My phone buzzed. A notification from Camille. She'd tagged me in an Instagram story. The photo showed our dinner table, carefully angled to catch the candlelight. "So blessed to have family time," the caption read, supporting my sister through her journey. #family first #new beginnings. I stared at the screen, at my own face captured mid-bite, looking exactly as lost as I felt. She'd managed to make my unemployment look like her charity project. The couch sank again when I returned to it later, and this time, I let it swallow me. Tomorrow would bring more of the same, more sympathy, more subtle jabs, more reminders of everything I'd lost. What I didn't know was that tomorrow would also bring the voice memo, the accidental gift that would change everything. But tonight, I was just another Monroe family disappointment, sinking into broken furniture, and pretending not to notice the way they all looked at me like I was a problem to be solved, a cautionary tale to be whispered about when I left the room. The ceiling stain had grown since high school, or maybe I'd just forgotten how big it was. Either way, I traced its edges with my eyes until sleep finally came, dreaming of corner offices and harbors I might never see again. The next morning, I found Camille in the kitchen at 6 a.m., already dressed for a run in coordinating athletic wear that probably cost more than my interview suit. She was making one of those green smoothies that looked like pond scum, but apparently contained superfoods. "Early riser," she chirped, not looking up from her blender. "Good habit to maintain, even when you're between opportunities." I poured coffee from the pot Mom had left on, ignoring the dig. "Always been a morning person." "Really? I remember you oversleeping for that big presentation junior year." She laughed, hitting blend. The noise filled the kitchen like a mechanical scream. "Professor Martinez was so disappointed, but then you always did struggle with time management." The comment stung, because it was partly true. I had overslept after pulling 3 all-nighters to perfect a design project, the same project Camille had asked to review the night before, claiming she wanted to learn from my approach. "That was 13 years ago," I said quietly. "God, has it been that long?" She poured her sludge into a mason jar. Time flies when you're building something meaningful, I guess. Over the next few days, a pattern emerged. Camille would appear wherever I was, armed with backhanded concerns and unsolicited advice. If I worked on my laptop in the living room, she'd peek over my shoulder, offering suggestions for my portfolio. If I took calls in the garden, she'd materialize with questions about my job search strategy. You know, she said one afternoon, finding me reviewing my designs on the porch, "Your work is so interesting, very ambitious," she said. Ambitious, the way people say, bless your heart, poison wrapped in politeness. Thanks. I kept scrolling, hoping she'd take the hint. She didn't. Instead, she settled into the wicker chair beside me, angling for a better view of my screen. "Oh, is that the Harbinson project?" she asked. "The one that didn't get approved?" I tensed. "How did you know about that?" "You mentioned it at Christmas," she waved dismissively. "The mixed-use space with the vertical gardens. Such a shame they went in another direction. Though I can see why the maintenance costs alone would have been astronomical." She was right, which made it worse. The clients had loved the design, but balked at the upkeep estimates. It remained one of my favorite concepts, even if it had never left the digital drawing board. Still, she continued, reaching for my laptop. "Mind if I look? I'm always curious about the roads not taken." Something in her tone made my skin crawl, but I handed it over. This was Camille's gift, making you feel petty for protecting your own work. She scrolled through the renderings with practiced ease, her expression thoughtful. "You know what's funny," she said. "I've been working on something similar for a client in Burlington, but obviously much more scaled down, more realistic." Obviously. That night at dinner, she regaled the family with stories about her Burlington project, describing design elements that sounded suspiciously familiar. Mom hung on every word, while Dad nodded approvingly. Even the twins seemed impressed by their mother's creativity. "The key," Camille explained, gesturing with her fork, "is knowing your limits. Some designers," her eyes flicked to me, "get so caught up in the vision, they forget about practicality. But real success comes from working within constraints." Here, Richard raised his wine glass. "To practical brilliance." Everyone toasted. I lifted my water glass a beat too late. The gesture felt more like surrender than celebration. Later, I overheard her on the phone in the guest room. Richard had taken the kids to get ice cream, and I was heading upstairs when Camille's voice drifted through the cracked door. "No, I understand the timeline. Yes, the sustainable elements are non-negotiable. Of course, I have some ideas. I've actually been developing this concept for months." I paused on the landing, guilt warring with curiosity. Eavesdropping was juvenile, but something in her tone, a certain smugness, kept me frozen. "The vertical gardens will be the centerpiece. Maintenance. I've solved that with a self-irrigating system." "No, it's proprietary. I'll share the details when we formalize the contract." My blood ran cold. The self-irrigating system had been my innovation, detailed in the Harbinson files she had just reviewed. I'd spent weeks perfecting it, researching suppliers, calculating water reclamation rates. I must have made a sound because her voice dropped. Footsteps approached the door. I bolted up the stairs, heart hammering, reaching my room just as her door opened fully. "Ila, is that you?" she called. I didn't answer, pressing my back against my closed door like a teenager caught breaking curfew. Through the wood, I heard her footsteps retreat, her voice resuming the conversation in lower tones. That night, I lay awake, replaying every interaction we'd had since my return, the casual interest in my work, the specific questions about projects and clients, the way she always steered conversations toward my failures while mining them for useful details. She's always been the star, Mom had said when Camille graduated summa cum laude while I'd scraped by with standard honors. Some people just shine brighter. But what if her light wasn't entirely her own? What if she'd been borrowing brightness all along, siphoning ideas like a creative vampire? The thought felt paranoid, disloyal. This was my sister, not some corporate spy. We'd shared bedrooms and secrets, fought over toys and boys. Surely I was projecting my own failures onto her success. Then I remembered senior year. My sustainable dorm room design that had won the university's Innovation Award. How Camille had gushed over it, asked detailed questions about the materials, the vendors, the cost breakdowns. 6 months later, she'd landed her first magazine feature for a revolutionary eco-friendly nursery design that bore striking similarities to my dorm concept. I'd said nothing then. I was proud of her, happy to see my ideas evolve in her hands. That's what family did, supported each other, shared freely, celebrated collective success. But now, lying in my childhood bed with my career in shambles, I wondered if I'd been naive, if my generosity had been weaponized against me. The next morning, Camille cornered me in the laundry room. So, I reached out to Helen at Eastwind, she said. My stomach dropped. Oh, just a friendly check-in, professional courtesy. She loaded towels with aggressive efficiency. Turns out they are concerned about some gaps in your resume, and there might have been an incident with a difficult client. I stared at her. There had been no incident. No difficult client. My record at Whitmore had been spotless until the layoffs. I don't know what you mean, I said. No, I said. That must be a misunderstanding. She started the washer, the water rushing in like white noise. Anyway, I smoothed things over. Told them you were working through some challenges, but had family support. They seemed receptive. She patted my shoulder on her way out, leaving me alone with the churning machine and a growing certainty that my paranoia wasn't misplaced. Something was happening here, something orchestrated and deliberate, but without proof. I was just the bitter sister, jealous of Camille's success, inventing conspiracies to explain my own failures. The washing machine spun, violent and loud. I watched it cycle around and around, like my thoughts, like my life, like the pattern I was only beginning to see. The voice memo arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, polishing my portfolio for the Eastwind interview, when my phone buzzed. A message from Camille, or rather, a voice message clearly sent by mistake. Delete after listening, the text above it read. Obviously meant for someone else. My finger hovered over the play button. Whatever this was, she hadn't meant for me to hear it. But after the laundry room conversation, after the mysterious concerns about my resume, I was done with giving her the benefit of the doubt. I pressed play. Mom, it's me, Camille's voice filled my earbuds, casual and conspiratorial. Just following up on our conversation about ILA. I made the call to Helen at Eastwind. My blood turned to ice water. Like we discussed, she continued. I was subtle. Don't worry, just mentioned I was her sister, calling as a professional reference. Said I wanted to be honest about her recent instability, nothing actionable, just enough to make them think twice. I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. The thing is, she continued, a note of irritation creeping in, she's actually talented. If she gets back on her feet, she could be real competition. Did you see that Harbinson project on her laptop? I need those vertical garden specs. I'm bidding on something similar. And her irrigation system is exactly what I need. There was a pause, the sound of traffic in the background. Anyway, I'll keep playing supportive sister. Maybe get her to collaborate on some concepts before she figures things out. It worked in college, right? She laughed, that tinkling sound now sharp as breaking glass. Remember her sustainable dorm design that launched my whole career. Girl never did learn to protect her assets. The message cut off abruptly. A follow-up text appeared immediately, wrong person. Ignore, delete now. Then another, ILA, that wasn't meant for you. Another, it's not what it sounds like. And finally, we need to talk. I sat frozen, staring at my phone as it buzzed with increasing urgency. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity, the interest in my work, the sabotaged opportunities, the career built on borrowed brilliance. My hands shook as I forwarded the message to my personal email, then backed it up to 3 different cloud services. Whatever happened next, I needed evidence. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Camille burst into the kitchen, face flushed, eyes wild. ILA, give me your phone. No, I said. That message, it's out of context. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, my voice came out steadier than I felt. You've been sabotaging me for years. That's dramatic, even for you. But her hand still reached for my phone. It was just career advice. Mom asked me to help by telling potential employers I'm unstable. By being honest about your situation, her mask slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. You show up here, no job, no prospects, expecting everyone to pretend you're not a mess. Someone had to manage expectations. Manage expectations. I stood, matching her height. Or steal my work. Oh, please, she scoffed. Like you invented sustainable design. She rolled her eyes. Ideas are cheap, ILA. Execution is what matters. And clearly, I execute better. The admission hung between us, brazen in its casualness. She wasn't even denying it anymore. Get out, I said quietly. This is Mom and Dad's house. Get out. She left, but not before trying one more grab for my phone. I yanked it away, and she stumbled, catching herself on the door frame. This is exactly the instability I was talking about, she hissed. You always were too emotional for this industry. After she left, I sat in the sudden silence, replaying the message. 6 times my name appeared, wrapped in condescension and betrayal. But worse than the sabotage was the revelation about my college project. That launched my whole career, she'd said like it was nothing, like she was entitled to it. I opened my laptop and started searching, Camille Morrison, Sustainable Design Pioneer. Article after article popped up, featuring projects that felt hauntingly familiar. The eco-nursery that mirrored my dorm design. A restaurant concept using reclaimed materials I'd sourced for a class project. Even her company logo bore similarities to sketches I'd left on her apartment table during a visit. How had I been so blind? But I knew how. She was my sister, family. The person who braided my hair for prom and held me when my first boyfriend dumped me. You don't look for betrayal in the people who share your blood. Mom found me there an hour later, still scrolling through Camille's portfolio of stolen dreams. What happened? Mom asked. Camille's upstairs crying. I played her the message without comment, watched her face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally a kind of weary recognition. Oh, Layla, she sighed. You always were so sensitive about her success. The words hit like a physical blow. You knew. I asked her to look out for you, Mom explained. Maybe she went too far, but her heart was in the right place. Her heart was in my portfolio. Mom, don't be crude, she said, straightening and defaulting to disapproval. Camille has worked hard for everything she has. If she borrowed some inspiration early on, well, that's what family does. Share. Sharing implies consent. It implies gratitude. Mom snapped. Do you know how many connections she's made for you over the years? How many times she's mentioned your name to important people? Before or after she poisoned the well? Mom's mouth tightened. I won't have you two fighting like children. Whatever happened, you'll work it out. You always do. She left me with that platitude, as if this were about a borrowed sweater, or a missed birthday, as if years of systematic theft could be resolved with a hug and an apology. I sat alone as afternoon faded to evening, the voice memo playing on repeat in my mind. Not just the words, but the tone, the casual cruelty of it, the easy way she dismissed my entire career as raw material for her own. Richard appeared around dinner time, looking uncomfortable. Hey, he said, shifting his weight. Heard there was some drama. Is that what she's calling it? Look, I don't get involved in sister stuff, but maybe consider that Camille's under a lot of pressure. Building a business isn't easy. Sometimes people make mistakes. Mistakes. I tasted the word. Like accidentally calling my potential employer to sabotage me. She was trying to help by stealing my designs. His face darkened. Careful, ILA. That's a serious accusation. Camille's reputation is spotless. You start throwing around claims like that without proof. I have proof, I insisted. A misinterpreted voicemail. He scoffed. Against years of established success. Come on, think about what you're implying, that your sister built an entire career on your homework. That's narcissistic, even for an artist. He left with that parting shot, and I realized they'd already crafted the narrative. I was the bitter failure, lashing out at my successful sister. The voice memo would be explained away, contextualized into meaninglessness. But they'd made one mistake. They thought I'd react with emotion, make a scene, prove their point about my instability. Instead, I sat quietly with my phone, scrolling through old files, screenshots of my college projects, emails with timestamps, photos of sketches and plans, all dated and documented. The voice memo wasn't my only evidence. It was just the key that unlocked years of careful record-keeping I'd done without realizing it. Every designer keeps archives. I just never thought I'd need mine for this. That night, I didn't join the family for dinner. I could hear them through the floor, normal conversation punctuated by laughter. The show going on without me, as if nothing had shattered. But something had broken, finally and irrevocably, the illusion that family meant safety, that blood guaranteed loyalty, that success couldn't be stolen if it was given with love. I played the message one more time before bed, memorizing every word. Girl never did learn to protect her assets, she'd said. She was wrong about that, too. I was learning now, despite everything. I went to the East Wind interview. Call it stubbornness or desperation, but I needed to know if Camille's poison had already taken root. I dressed carefully, my best remaining suit. The portfolio, leather-bound and pristine. If I was walking into a trap, at least I'd look professional doing it. The East Wind offices occupied a converted mill building downtown. All exposed brick and industrial windows. Very Vermont chic. The receptionist smiled warmly, which I took as a good sign until I saw Helen from HR waiting in the lobby. Her expression was carefully neutral, the kind of face people wear when delivering bad news. ILA, so glad you could make it, she said. Her handshake was firm but brief. Why don't we chat in my office before you meet the design team? Red flag. HR first meant concerns, not excitement. Her office was aggressively cheerful, motivational posters, and succulents fighting against the converted factory bones. She gestured to a chair across from her desk, maintaining that careful smile. So, she began, folding her hands. We've reviewed your portfolio, and your work is impressive, really innovative. Thank you. However, she continued, there it was. We did receive some feedback that gave us pause about your recent employment situation. I kept my face neutral. What kind of feedback? Well, your sister called as a reference. Helen's eyes searched my face. She mentioned some concerns about your stability during this transition period. Said you might not be ready for a high-pressure environment. My sister, I let the words hang. Did she mention she's a competitor in this market? Helen's eyebrows rose slightly. She presented herself as a family reference. Someone who knows you well. Someone who knows my work well enough to use it. The words escaped before I could stop them. Helen leaned back, reassessing. That's a serious implication. It's a serious situation. I pulled out my phone. May I show you something? I played the voice memo, watched Helen's face shift from skepticism to surprise to something like anger. When Camille's voice said instability, Helen's jaw tightened. I see, she said when it finished. This is illuminating. I have more documentation if you needed date-stamped files showing my original designs that predate her similar projects. That won't be necessary, Helen said, standing. At least, not for the interview. I think we should proceed to the design team. They are eager to meet you. The rest of the interview felt like a dream. The design team, 3 women and 2 men, all sharp and engaged, grilled me about my process, my inspiration, my problem-solving approach. They showed genuine excitement about my Harbinson project, asking detailed questions about the irrigation system Camille had coveted. This is exactly the kind of innovation we need, the lead designer, Marcus, said. Practical but visionary. How soon could you start? I blinked. You're offering me the position. Pending reference checks, of course, he grinned. But between you and me, you're exactly what we are looking for. Helen walked me out, her demeanor completely changed. We'll be in touch within 48 hours, she said, then lowering her voice. An ILA, we take professional ethics very seriously here. What your sister did, that's not okay. I drove home in a daze, possibility and dread warring in my chest. I'd gotten the job, pending references, but Camille was still out there, and she'd already proven how far she'd go. The house was quiet when I returned. A note on the kitchen table in Mom's handwriting read, took the twins to the farmer's market. Dinner at 6. I climbed the stairs, noticing Camille's door ajar. The room was empty. Beds made with military precision. Her suitcase sat open on the luggage rack, clothes folded in perfect squares. I shouldn't have looked, but something pulled me forward. Maybe the same instinct that made me play that voice memo. Her leather portfolio sat on the desk, monogrammed and expensive. My fingers itched to open it, but I resisted. I wasn't her. I didn't steal. Then I saw it, peeking out from under the portfolio, a familiar spiral binding, my senior thesis, the one I thought I'd lost in the move after graduation. I pulled it free with shaking hands, my name on the cover, my professor's notes in red ink throughout. But there were other notes, too, in Camille's handwriting, calculations in the margins, supplier names circled. Adapt this, written next to my sustainable materials list. Under the thesis, more documents, printouts of my emails to Whitmore clients, forwarded from an address I didn't recognize, screenshots of my LinkedIn connections, even a PDF of my Harbinson proposal downloaded from my laptop during one of her helpful portfolio reviews. She'd been building a file on me, studying me like a competitor, not a sister. Find what you're looking for. I spun. Camille stood in the doorway, arms crossed, no longer pretending to be anything but what she was. My thesis, I said, holding it up. The one you said you never saw after graduation. You left it at Mom and Dad's, she shrugged. Finders keepers. Besides, you weren't using those ideas. They were just sitting there going to waste. They were mine. Were they, though? She moved into the room, predatory despite her small frame. Ideas are nothing without execution. ILA, you had all these grand plans. But what did you do with them? Work for other people. Follow someone else's vision. Me? I made them real. You made them yours. I made them better. Her eyes glinted. Every design you sketched, I improved. Every concept you abandoned, I refined. That's not theft, that's evolution. And the sabotage was evolution, too. She laughed, cold and sharp. Oh, please. One phone call didn't tank your career. You did that all by yourself. I wanted to rage at her, to list every stolen moment, every borrowed brilliance. But something in her face stopped me. She genuinely believed what she was saying. In her mind, she wasn't a thief, she was an improver, a refiner of raw materials, and I was just another resource. I got the job, I said instead, at East Wind, despite your call. Her mask slipped for just a moment. What? She asked. They were very interested in the voice memo, and Helen seems to take professional ethics seriously. You played that for them? Her voice pitched higher. ILA, that was private. Like my thesis was private. Like my designs were private. That's different. No, Camille, it's exactly the same. I gathered the documents, my documents, from her desk. Except I'm done being your source material. She grabbed my wrist as I passed. You have no idea what you're starting. I have connections, reputation, influence. You're nobody. A failed designer from a failed firm with a grudge against her successful sister. Who do you think people will believe? I looked at her hand on my wrist, manicured nails digging in like claws. Then I looked at her face, my sister's face, twisted with something ugly and desperate. I think, I said slowly, people will believe the evidence. I pulled free and left her standing there, surrounded by the tools of her trade, my ideas, my work, my stolen dreams scattered across her temporary desk. That night at dinner, she performed beautifully, the caring sister, concerned about my episode earlier. She painted a picture of me as unstable, jealous, prone to paranoid accusations. Mom nodded along. Dad looked uncomfortable, and Richard avoided eye contact entirely. Only the twins seemed unaffected, chattering about their market finds between bites. I ate in silence, letting her spin her narrative. Let her think she was winning. Every word she spoke dug her hole deeper, revealed more of her methods. I memoized it all, filing it away with the rest of the evidence. I just want what's best for ILA, Camille concluded, reaching for my hand across the table. Even if she can't see that right now. I let her take my hand, felt the possessive squeeze disguised as affection. I know, I said, meeting her eyes. And I want what's best for you, too. She smiled, triumphant, missing the promise in my words. Because what was best for Camille was a reckoning, a public unveiling of the Emperor's borrowed clothes, and I was going to make sure she got exactly what she deserved. The thesis sat in my room now, evidence tag number 1 in a growing file. Tomorrow, I'd scan every page, document every stolen detail. The portfolio they thought I'd forget. I was just getting started. I left the house at 3 a.m., loading my car in the dark like a thief, which was ironic, considering I was only taking what belonged to me, my laptop, my portfolios, my clothes, and a banker's box full of evidence that would rewrite the Morrison family narrative. The extended stay hotel off Route 89 wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, and more importantly, Camille-free. I'd paid for a week using the last of my severance, buying myself time and space to think clearly. The room smelled like industrial cleaning products and old carpet. But when I set up my laptop on the small desk by the window, It felt like a command center. My phone had been buzzing since dawn, Mom, Dad, even Richard. I turned it to silent and got to work. First, I created digital copies of everything, my thesis annotated with Camille's notes, the emails she'd somehow accessed, the screenshots showing how revolutionary designs next to my original sketches dated years earlier. I organized it all into folders: college-era theft, professional sabotage, voice memo evidence. Then I started connecting dots I'd been too trusting to see before. Her first big client, the Morrison Pediatric Clinic. How convenient that they shared a last name, pure coincidence, she'd claimed, had requested an eco-friendly nursery. The design that made her reputation was nearly identical to my sophomore year project, right down to the recycled wood accent wall and non-toxic paint palette I'd spent weeks researching. The sustainable restaurant that got her featured in Vermont Life. I found my junior year sketches for a farm-to-table concept, complete with living walls and reclaimed furniture. She'd even used the same vendor I'd contacted for salvaged barnwood. I still had the email exchange. But the smoking gun was an email I found in my old Gmail drafts. Never sent. I'd written it to her 5 years ago. After seeing her win an award for innovative sustainable design, I'd congratulated her, mentioned how similar it was to my work, even joked about being her unofficial consultant. I deleted it instead of sending it, not wanting to seem petty. Now I wished I'd been pettier sooner. My phone screen lit up with another call from Mom. This time I answered. "Ila Monroe, you get back here right now." Her voice was tight with fury. "How dare you sneak out like a teenager? Camille is devastated. She thinks you hate her." "I don't hate her," I said, saving another file. "I'm just done enabling her." "Enabling? She's tried nothing but help you." "Mom, did you know she has my college thesis?" I asked. "The one I couldn't find after graduation." Silence. "Then, you probably left it here, with her handwriting all over it, with "Adapt" written next to my original designs. I don't know what you think you saw. I have photos, Mom. Time-stamped, geotagged photos. I pulled up the images on my laptop, even though she couldn't see them. Would you like me to send them to you, or should I just post them publicly? Don't you dare threaten. It's not a threat, I countered. It's a question. Do you want to see the evidence privately, or should I let everyone else judge for themselves? She hung up. I worked through the morning, fueled by hotel coffee and years of suppressed anger. By noon, I had a comprehensive timeline showing how Camille's career milestones aligned suspiciously with access to my work. Every award, every breakthrough, every innovative design traced back to something I'd created first. Then I opened LinkedIn and started writing, on professional ethics and personal betrayal, a designer's story. I wrote about the voice memo first, transcribing it word for word. Then I worked backward, documenting each instance of theft with screenshots and dates. I was careful to stick to facts, letting the evidence speak for itself. I'm sharing this not out of vengeance, but out of necessity, I concluded. How many other young designers have had their work appropriated by those they trusted? How many have been gaslit into believing their ideas weren't worth protecting? This is my story, but I suspect it's not unique. My finger hovered over the post button. Once this went live, there was no taking it back. The Morrison family Christmas would never be the same. Camille's reputation would be scrutinized. Mom would never forgive me. A text popped up from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw the preview. "This is Helen from Eastwind." I opened it fully. "Hi, Ila. I hope you don't mind the direct contact. I wanted to let you know we've completed our reference checks." Despite one notably negative review, the rest were glowing. The position is yours if you still want it. Also, between us, that voice memo has been making rounds in our leadership team. We'd love to discuss bringing you on as a consultant for our new ethics and design initiative. Call me when you can. I stared at the message, then at my unsent LinkedIn post. Camille had tried to destroy my career, but she'd failed. I had a job, a future, options. I could walk away now. Take the high road. Let her keep her stolen success. Another text arrived. This time from Camille, we need to talk. I have a proposition. Curiosity 1. I called her. Thank God, Camille said. She answered on the first ring. Look, I know you're upset, but let's be practical. You need money. I need discretion. What if we called it even? I'll pay you a consulting fee for your past contributions. Retroactive collaboration. We'll make it official. How much? I asked, genuinely curious what she thought my career was worth. $50,000 cash. No tax implications for you, $50,000 for 10 years of ideas. Fine, $75,000, but that's my final offer. And you sign an NDA. We never speak of this again. I almost laughed. She was trying to buy my silence like I was a disgruntled employee, not her sister, not the person whose creativity she'd strip-mined for over a decade. Camille, I said slowly, I don't want your money. Everyone wants money. I want credit. I want every design you stole attributed correctly. I want public acknowledgement of what you did. She actually laughed. You're delusional. I built this business. My name, my reputation, my connections. You think anyone cares about your college doodles? I think Helen at East Wind cared, I replied. I think Vermont Life might care about the real story behind their featured designer. I think your clients might care that their innovative solutions came from someone else's innovation. You wouldn't, she said. The family, mom and dad, it would kill them. No, I corrected. It would embarrass them. There's a difference. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, her voice low and venomous, if you do this, you're dead to me. Dead to this family. You'll be the bitter sister, who couldn't handle someone else's success. Is that really how you want to be remembered? I'd rather be remembered as bitter than forgotten entirely, I said. Which is what you tried to do to me. I hung up and went back to my laptop. The LinkedIn post waited, cursor blinking, but something had shifted during that call. The rage had cooled into something more strategic. I closed LinkedIn and opened a new document. If I was going to tell this story, I'd tell it right, not in a social media rant, but in something more permanent, more professional, The Ethics of Design, a case study in intellectual property theft by Layla Monroe. I'd write the article properly, submit it to industry publications, let peer review validate my claims, and build my new reputation on the foundation of truth, not the rubble of revenge. But first, I had a call to make to Helen about that ethics initiative, and maybe, just maybe, a discussion about what happens when a major local designer's credibility comes into question. East Wind competed with Camille for clients. They'd be very interested in a fully documented case of professional misconduct. I looked around my budget hotel room, at my evidence spread across the desk, at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. I wasn't the same person who'd slunk home in defeat. I wasn't even the same person who discovered that voice memo just days ago. I'm not crazy, I said to my reflection. I'm just not quiet anymore. And in this industry, in this family, that might be the most dangerous thing of all. 3 weeks into my new position at East Wind, I was reviewing proposals when Marcus knocked on my office door. Yes, I had an actual office now, with a door and everything. Got a minute? He asked, carrying a folder thick with documents. Interesting opportunity just came up. Major client, huge budget. They are looking for a sustainable mixed-use development, and they want local firms to pitch. Sounds perfect for us. Here's the thing. He set the folder on my desk. They specifically requested proposals from the top regional firms, East Wind, obviously, Brennan Associates, and, he paused, Morrison Design Collective. My stomach tightened. I see. I know there's history there, but I also know you're the best sustainable designer we have. So, here's what I'm thinking, you lead our proposal. Show them what real innovation looks like. I flipped through the brief. The client was Riverside Development Group, looking to transform an old industrial complex into a green community space. It was exactly the kind of project I'd dreamed about, the kind Camille had built her reputation on with my ideas. There's more, Marcus continued. They want team presentations, face-to-face pitches, all firms in the same day, back-to-back. Meaning I'd be in the same building as Camille, presenting competing designs. The irony was almost poetic. I'm in, I said. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into the proposal, but I didn't work alone. Helen from HR had taken my ethics initiative seriously, bringing in an intellectual property lawyer to review my documentation. Together, we'd been building something bigger than a personal grievance, a case study on professional theft that could reshape how the industry handled attribution. This is remarkable, the lawyer, Janet Stein, said during one of our meetings. The pattern is clear, documented, undeniable. Have you considered that your sister might have done this to others? I hadn't, but Janet had. She'd quietly reached out to former employees of Morrison Design Collective. 2 had stories eerily similar to mine, designs that appeared under Camille's name. Ideas that were refined beyond recognition. Careers that mysteriously stalled after they left. She's not just a thief, Janet said. She's a serial predator of talent. The word predator stuck with me as I developed the Riverside proposal. Every choice I made was deliberate, showcasing not just good design, but original thinking. I included elements I'd never shared with anyone, concepts I'd developed during my hotel room exile. Ideas that were unquestionably mine. But I also included something else. A section on design heritage, tracking the evolution of sustainable architecture in Vermont, highlighting pioneers and innovations. It was educational, thorough, and just happened to include timeline comparisons between certain acclaimed projects and their uncredited predecessors. I wasn't naming names. I was just presenting facts. The night before the presentation, my phone rang. Mom, your father's having chest pains, she said without preamble. We're at the hospital. My blood froze. Is he? He's stable, but the stress of this situation with you and Camille. She let the implication hang. I drove to the hospital, finding them in the cardiac unit. Dad looked pale but alert, hooked to monitors that beeped reassuringly. Camille was already there, playing devoted daughter. ILA, she said. Dad's voice was weak, but warm. You came. Of course, I came. I took his hand, ignoring Camille's presence. We sat in silence while Mom bustled around, adjusting blankets that didn't need adjusting. It was just a panic attack, the doctor explained later. Stress-induced. He needs to avoid high-pressure situations for a while. Camille followed me to the parking lot. This is what your vendetta causes, she hissed. Dad could have died. Dad had a panic attack because he's caught between 2 daughters, one of whom has been lying to him for years. I never lied. Omission is lying, Camille. Every award you accepted for my work was a lie. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. Drop out of the Riverside pitch. What? You heard me. Drop out. Tell them you have a family emergency. It's even true. You're actually using Dad's health to manipulate me. I'm trying to save this family. Her mask had completely fallen now, revealing something desperate and ugly. If we are both in that room tomorrow, things will be said, accusations made. Do you really want that? Getting back to Dad while he's recovering. Then you drop out. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I have a business to run. Employees who depend on me. Real responsibilities, not just a new job. Playing dress up as a designer. Playing dress up with my ideas. You mean? God, you're exhausting. She turned toward her car, then spun back. Fine. You want to play this out tomorrow in front of everyone. Just remember, I've been doing this for years. I know how to work a room, how to sell a vision. You're just an angry ex-employee with a grudge and a PowerPoint. She drove off, leaving me in the hospital parking lot with a decision to make. I sat in my car for an hour, torn between family loyalty and professional justice. Dad's pale face haunted me, but so did years of silenced creativity, stolen dreams, diminished worth. Finally, I texted Marcus, family emergency at the hospital. Dad's okay, but it's been a long night. I might be late tomorrow, but I'll be there. Because Camille was wrong about one thing. This wasn't about working a room or selling a vision. It was about truth. I drove back to my apartment. Yes, I'd gotten my own place, small but mine, and reviewed my presentation one more time. The design heritage section glowed on my screen, damning in its objectivity. I'd included my college thesis in the citations, the one with Camille's notes all over it, the one I now had legally notarized copies of. She thought I was playing dress up. Tomorrow, I'd show her what real design looked like, what original thought could accomplish, what happened when the source material finally stood up and spoke for itself. The hospital bracelet was still on my wrist from visiting Dad. I touched it like a talisman, then cut it off. Tomorrow, I couldn't afford sentimentality. Tomorrow was about business, and Camille was about to learn that her little sister had grown up. The Riverside Development Group had rented the entire top floor of the Hartwell building for the presentations. I arrived early, setting up in the designated prep room, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Through the glass walls, I could see the city sprawling below, all that potential space waiting to be transformed. Camille arrived 15 minutes later with her team, 3 young designers, who looked suspiciously like younger versions of herself. Our eyes met across the lobby. She smiled, all professional courtesy, but her fingers gripped her portfolio case like a weapon. ILA, she said, her tone suggesting anything but gladness. Glad to see you made it despite the family emergency. Dad would want me to honor my commitments, I replied evenly. The Riverside team consisted of 5 executives, including CEO David Park, a man known for both his environmental advocacy and his intolerance for. They gathered us all in the main conference room for introductions. We are excited to see what Vermont's finest can offer, Park said. The order will be Brennan Associates, Morrison Design Collective, then East Wind Concepts. Each firm gets 45 minutes. I sat through Brennan's presentation, taking notes, but mostly preparing mentally. Then came Camille's turn. She was good. I had to give her that. Poised, articulate, passionate. Her designs were sleek, incorporating all the buzzwords: carbon neutral, LEED platinum, biophilic integration. But as I watched, I recognized elements: the water reclamation system from my Harbinson project, the modular green spaces from my senior thesis. Even the presentation structure felt familiar. Our design heritage section, she said, clicking to a new slide, shows Morrison Design Collective's long history of innovation. She'd stolen even this, my concept, my framing, twisted to showcase her fictional legacy. But where my heritage section included citations and credits, hers was notably sparse on sources. When she finished, the room applauded politely. Park asked a few questions about implementation costs, timeline, feasibility, standard stuff. Then he said something that made my pulse quicken. Your irrigation system seems remarkably similar to one we saw in a failed proposal last year. The Harbinson project. Can you speak to that? Camille didn't miss a beat. Parallel innovation is common in sustainable design. Great minds, similar solutions. She smiled. Though I believe our approach improves on previous concepts significantly. My turn. I started with a blank screen. No logo, no title slide, just darkness. Before I show you what Eastwind can offer, I began, I want to tell you a story about design, about where ideas come from, how they evolve, and why attribution matters. Click. My college thesis appeared on screen, the original, with my professor's notes visible. 11 years ago, I wrote this thesis on sustainable urban spacing. It won my university's Innovation Award. Some of you might recognize elements of it. They've appeared in numerous projects since, just never with my name attached. I heard Camille shift in her seat behind me. Click. The design heritage timeline appeared, but expanded. Side-by-side comparisons of my dated, documented work and eerily similar published projects. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The Morrison Design Collective logo was visible in the published versions. Innovation builds on innovation, I continued. That's healthy, but theft disguised as inspiration corrodes the very foundation of creative integrity. This is highly inappropriate. Camille's voice cut through. Are you actually using your pitch time to make accusations? I turned to face her. I'm using my time to establish the authenticity of what I'm about to present, to assure Riverside that every design element you'll see is original, traceable, and legally protected. Park raised a hand. Let her continue. I pivoted to the actual proposal. 40 minutes of pure design. Each element was crafted specifically for Riverside's needs. The building breathed with natural light. The spaces flowed like water. The sustainability features went beyond current standards into genuine innovation. I showed not just what could be built, but why it mattered, how each choice connected to community, environment, future. But I saved the best for last. There's one more thing, I said. Click. The voice memo transcript appeared on screen. Recently, I discovered that professional sabotage accompanies design theft more often than we'd like to admit, I continued. This is a transcript of an accidental recording where a competitor, who happens to be my sister, admits to calling my potential employers to undermine my applications. Gasps came from Camille's team. She stood, face flushed. You can't, I can, I interrupted, clicking again. Here's the full audio file, submitted as evidence in an ongoing ethics investigation. But that's not why I'm sharing it. I'm sharing it because Riverside deserves to know exactly who they are getting into bed with. Design is built on trust. How can you trust someone who steals from their own family? Mom, press play, I said, clicking one final time. Camille's voice filled the room. Not the whole memo, I'd edited it to the most damning parts. Her admission about my college work launching her career, her casual discussion of stealing the Harbinson irrigation system, her laugh as she called me too trusting to protect my assets. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Park looked between us, his expression unreadable. Ms. Morrison, do you have a response? Camille straightened, her mask sliding back into place. Family dynamics are complicated. My sister has struggled with my success for years. This is clearly a vindictive attempt to damage my reputation, based on a private conversation taken out of context. Is it your voice on the recording? Park asked. Yes, but did you call her potential employers? I was concerned about her mental state. Silence. Park turned to his team, murmured something, then back to us. We'll need time to process all proposals. However, Ms. Morrison, given what we've heard today, we'll also need you to provide documentation proving original creation for all designs in your portfolio. Ms. Monroe will need the same from you, as well as copies of your evidence for our legal team to review. Camille's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. This is ridiculous. I've been serving clients successfully for 8 years. With whose ideas? One of the other executives asked quietly. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Camille's team huddled around her, whispering urgently. The Brennan Associates people looked like they were watching a car crash. Park's assistant appeared to escort us all out, promising decisions within a week. In the elevator down, Camille and I ended up alone. 30 floors of silence until she spoke. You've ruined everything. No, I said, watching the numbers descend. I've said everything right. Dad's in the hospital because of your drama. Mom won't speak to you. You've destroyed our family for what? A job? A point. For my name, I said simply. On my work. It's really that simple. The doors opened. She stalked out without another word, heels clicking on marble like a countdown to something ending. I stood in the lobby for a moment, letting it sink in. I'd done it publicly, professionally, irrevocably. Whatever happened next, the truth was out there. My phone buzzed. Helen from East Wind. Marcus just called. Says you killed it. Also says Morrison looked ready to commit murder. You okay? Was I? I thought about Dad in the hospital. Mom's cold silence. Camille's empire built on my foundations now shaking. I'm perfect, I texted back. And for the first time in years, I meant it. Because this time, I held the mic. My voice, my terms, my truth, finally told. The call from David Park came 3 days later. I was in my office working on an unrelated project, trying not to obsess over the Riverside decision. When his name appeared on my phone screen, I had to take a breath before answering. Ms. Monroe, he said, I'll cut to the chase. We want East Wind for the project. Relief flooded through me, but his tone suggested there was more. However, he continued, we have a condition. Morrison Design Collective has certain vendor relationships and local connections we need. We want Camille's firm involved, but in a limited capacity, vendor liaison and community outreach only. You'll be lead designer. Are you comfortable with that arrangement? I stared out my window. Processing. They wanted me to work with Camille, but with our roles reversed, me in charge, her in a support position. Good. There's a contract meeting Monday. Both firms need to attend, he paused. And Ms. Monroe, that presentation was one of the gutsiest things I've seen in 20 years of development. Don't lose that edge. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office, letting it sink in. I'd won. Not just the contract, but the narrative. The true designer would lead the design. Marcus appeared in my doorway, grinning. Heard the news. Champagne tonight. Rain check, I said. I need to make a call. I dialed Camille's office. Her assistant put me straight through. What do you want? Her voice was ice. Riverside wants us both. I'm lead designer, your vendor liaison. Monday meeting to sign contracts. Silence. Then, you planned this. I planned to tell the truth. This is just consequence. You could refuse. You could, but we both know you won't. Your investors are already asking questions after that presentation. You need this contract to save face. Another pause. I could picture her in her pristine office calculating options. Fine, she spat. But don't expect me to make this easy. I expect you to be exactly who you've always been, I said. The difference is, now everyone else knows it, too. Monday arrived, grey and drizzling, pathetic fallacy at its finest. The contract meeting was at Riverside's offices, a gleaming building that seemed to judge everyone who entered. I arrived to find Camille already there, power-suited and perfect. She'd brought Richard and one assistant. I had Marcus and Janet Stein, our legal advisor, who'd helped document everything. Park's team laid out the terms. East Wind would receive 70% of the design fee, Morrison Design Collective, 30% for vendor management and community relations. My name would appear as lead designer on all materials. Camille's firm would be listed as contributing consultant. This is insulting, Richard said, reviewing the contract. Morrison Design has been lead on projects twice this size. Things change, Park replied simply. Your firm's recent credibility issues require us to structure things differently. Credibility issues. Such a polite way to say exposed theft. Camille signed with vicious precision, each initial a small violence against the paper. When we finished, Park's assistant distributed project binders. First community meeting is Thursday, Park announced. We'll present the winning design to local stakeholders. Both firms should attend. Show a united front. In the parking garage afterward, Camille cornered me by my car. You think you've won, she said. But you don't understand how this world works. Talent is nothing without connections, without reputation, without the ability to play the game. You've got one project. I've got 8 years of relationships built on my foundations. She smiled. Sharp as winter. Prove it, she challenged. Prove any of it holds up legally. That recording is inadmissible in most courts. Vermont's a two-party consent state. Your thesis. Good luck proving damages from student work. You played your dramatic card, but drama doesn't last. I do. She left me standing there, doubt creeping in like the cold garage air. She was right about the legal complexities. Janet had said as much. Emotional satisfaction didn't equal courtroom victory. But I had something Camille didn't understand. I had the truth. And more importantly, I had people willing to listen to it. Thursday's community meeting packed the town hall. Local business owners, residents, city council members, all eager to hear about the development that would transform their neighborhood. I sat on the presentation panel, Camille 2 seats down, the space between us charged with unspoken hostility. Park introduced the project, then turned to me. Ms. Monroe will present the design overview. I stood, clicking to my first slide. The rendering showed a living building, green walls cascading with native plants, solar panels disguised as architectural elements, spaces that breathed with natural light. The core principle, I began, is authentic sustainability. Not just greenwashing or token gestures, but genuine integration with the environment and community. I walked them through each element, explaining not just what, but why, the urban garden that would supply the ground floor restaurant, the rainwater system that would irrigate the green walls, the co-working spaces designed to foster collaboration between residents and local businesses. These ideas, I said, clicking to a new slide, evolved from a thesis I wrote 11 years ago on sustainable urban design. I've spent over a decade refining these concepts, waiting for the right project to bring them fully to life. I caught Camille's eye as I said it. She sat rigid, hands folded, that practiced smile frozen on her face. Questions followed. Concerns about traffic, requests for local hiring, excitement about the community gardens. I fielded them all, drawing on years of research, my research, finally attributed correctly. Then a hand raised in the back. What's Morrison Design's role in all this? Camille stood smoothly. We are thrilled to support East Wind's vision with our local expertise and vendor relationships. My firm has spent 8 years building connections in this community. We know every supplier, every contractor, every stakeholder who can make this project successful. She was good, pivoting from design thief to invaluable local partner in one graceful maneuver. But I saw the cracks, the way her smile never reached her eyes, the white-knuckled grip on her portfolio. After the meeting, people lingered, asking questions, exchanging cards. A reporter from Vermont Life approached, the same magazine that had featured Camille's work. Ms. Monroe, the reporter said. That was impressive. We'd love to do a feature on you, rising stars of sustainable design. Something like that. I'd be happy to discuss it, I said, handing her my card. She lowered her voice. Between us, we've been hearing interesting things about attribution in the design community. If you ever want to tell that story. Behind her, I saw Camille watching, calculating. The reporter moved on. But the damage was done. The whispers had started. The narrative was shifting. Back in my car, I found a text from Dad. Saw the news about Riverside. Proud of you, kiddo. Mom will come around. I sat in the dark parking lot, reading it twice. Then I started my car and drove home, leaving Camille to work the room she could no longer own. Because this time, I held more than the MIC. I held the pen that would write the next chapter. And in this version of the story, the real designer finally got credit for her designs. The Vermont Life article went live 2 weeks later. The real innovation behind Green Urban Revival, Layla Monroe's decade-long vision, sprawled across their digital platform, with stunning photos of my original thesis sketches alongside the Riverside renderings. The reporter, Sarah Chen, had done her homework. She'd interviewed my college professors, tracked down classmates who remembered my senior project, even found the award announcement from 11 years ago. But the devastating part for Camille was the timeline graphic, showing my documented concepts appearing months or years later in Morrison Design collective projects. Sarah had been careful, legally bulletproof. She never accused, she just laid out facts and let readers connect the dots. My phone exploded within hours. Former classmates reaching out with "I always wondered about that" messages. Design firms inquiring about my availability for consulting. 3 speaking invitations for industry conferences. But the call that mattered came from an unexpected source, Patricia Williams, Camille's first big client from the Morrison Pediatric Clinic. Ms. Monroe, I just read the article. I think we need to talk. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Patricia was smaller than I'd expected, bird-like, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. I hired Camille 8 years ago to design our nursery, she began without preamble. Paid her $200,000. The design won awards, launched her career. But reading your article, seeing your thesis, she pulled out her phone, showing screenshots. This is your work, isn't it? I looked at the familiar recycled wood walls, the non-toxic paint palette I'd spent weeks researching. The concept is very similar to my sophomore project. Yes? Don't lawyer speak me, her voice hardened. Is this your work? The bones of it? Yes. She refined it, adapted it to your space. But the core innovation is yours. Patricia sat back, coffee untouched. I feel like an idiot, but more than that, I feel complicit. How many more are there? At least a dozen that I can document. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I serve on 3 hospital boards. We are always commissioning design work. Morrison Design is on our preferred vendor list. She paused meaningfully. Was on our list. I'm not trying to destroy her business. Aren't you? She stuttered me. Because from where I sit, that's exactly what you're doing. And honestly. Good. The design community is small. Trust matters. She violated that. Patricia left after extracting a promise that I'd send her my portfolio. Within days, I heard through industry gossip that Morrison Design had lost 2 more major clients. The bleeding had begun. Camille's response came in the form of a cease and desist letter delivered to both Eastwind and my apartment. Her lawyers claimed defamation, tortious interference, and half a dozen other torts I had to Google. Janet Stein laughed when I showed her. She's desperate. Nothing in that article is defamatory. Truth is an absolute defense. As for interference, you didn't contact her clients. They are making their own choices. So, I ignore it. God, no, Janet said. We respond aggressively, with our own letter detailing the evidence of theft and suggesting that any legal action will result in very public discovery. Janet's smile was sharp. Let's see how eager she is to have her design process examined under oath. The letters flew back and forth for a week, an expensive game of legal chicken. Then, suddenly, silence. Camille's lawyers stopped responding. Morrison Design's website went static. I was reviewing vendor bids for Riverside when Marcus knocked. You need to see this. He handed me his tablet, showing Morrison Design's LinkedIn page, a new post from Camille. After 8 incredible years, Morrison Design Collective is restructuring to focus on consulting and design education. I'll be taking a sabbatical to pursue advanced certification in sustainable design practices and to reflect on the evolution of creative attribution in our industry. Thank you to all our clients and partners for your trust and support. She's folding, Marcus said. Word is she lost 6 major clients this month. Staff is jumping ship. I stared at the corporate speak, concealing complete collapse. Part of me felt not satisfaction, exactly, maybe relief. Or was it grief for the sister I'd thought I'd had? That evening, Mom called, first contact in over a month. Your father wants to see you, both of you, together. Mom, please, ILA, Dad's voice was weary. He's been following all of this. The stress isn't good for his recovery. Just one dinner. Try to make peace. Peace, as if this were a playground squabble instead of systematic theft and sabotage. But I went because despite everything, they were still my parents. The dinner was surreal. We sat at the same table where Camille had first performed her concerned sister act. But now the power dynamic had completely shifted. She looked smaller somehow, her designer clothes hanging loose, her perfect hair showing roots. I want this to stop, Dad said without preamble. This public fighting, you too. She stole from me, Dad. 4 years. I refined undeveloped concepts, Camille interjected, but without her usual conviction. You built a career on my foundation, and tried to bury me when I threatened to expose it. Enough, Dad's voice was weary. I don't care who did what anymore. I care that my daughters are destroying each other. ILA, you've made your point. You've won. Can't that be enough? Would it be enough if someone stole 8 years of your work? He had no answer for that. Mom tried to salvage dinner with small talk, but we ate in mostly silence. Camille pushed food around her plate. I counted minutes until I could leave. As we cleared dishes, Camille cornered me in the kitchen. You know what the worst part is, she said. I actually convinced myself I was helping you. That your ideas needed my execution to matter. I believed my own. It was the closest to an apology I'd get. Maybe you were trying to help in some twisted way, I said. But help requires consent and attribution, and not actively sabotaging my career when I became inconvenient. I know. She looked out the window at the yard where we'd played as children. I've lost everything, the business, the reputation. Richard's talking about separating. Says he can't trust someone who'd betray their own sister. You didn't lose it, Camille, I said. You built it on quicksand and acted surprised when it sank. She laughed, bitter and short. God, you really hate me now. No, I said, and I found I meant it. I don't hate you. You're just a cautionary tale now. A reminder to protect my work and trust carefully. That hit harder than anger would have. She flinched, then straightened, assembling whatever dignity remained. The Riverside project will be magnificent, she said quietly. It was always your vision. I see that now. She left without saying goodbye. Through the window, I watched her drive away in her Tesla, probably soon to be repossessed, given her firm's implosion. Mom found me there. Was that so hard, being civil? That wasn't civility, Mom. That was closure. I hugged Dad goodbye, promised to visit more, and drove home through Vermont's quiet streets. My phone had 3 messages from potential clients, 2 interview requests, and an invitation to speak at the Design Ethics Summit. 6 months ago, I'd been nobody, the failed sister, the cautionary tale. Now, I was Layla Monroe, lead designer at Eastwind, voice of ethical attribution, and the woman who'd stood up to a thief who happened to share her DNA. The reputation transfer was complete. But more than that, the truth was finally, irrevocably known, and that was worth more than any stolen success could ever be. 6 months later, I stood in my new corner office, yes, another one, but this time earned rather than lost, reviewing the final plans for Riverside's groundbreaking ceremony. The project had evolved beyond even my original vision, incorporating ideas from community members, environmental specialists, and the brilliant team at Eastwind who actually respected attribution. My assistant knocked. Ms. Monroe, your 3 o'clock is here. I'd been expecting the architecture students from UVM, eager to discuss ethical design practices. What I hadn't expected was to see Camille among them. She hung back as the students filed in, clearly uncertain of her welcome. She looked different, hair grown out to its natural brown. Designer clothes replaced with simple jeans and a blazer. But the biggest change was in her eyes. The calculating sharpness had given way to something more tentative, human. I'm auditing the sustainable design program, she explained quietly as students settled around my conference table. Actually learning this time, instead of just taking. I nodded. Professional. Then have a seat. We are discussing the intersection of innovation and attribution. For the next hour, I led a seminar on ethical design, using sanitized examples from my own experience. The students were engaged, asking pointed questions about protecting their work while still collaborating freely. Camille took notes silently, her presence both a distraction and a strange form of validation. As they prepared to leave, one student asked, "What's the biggest lesson you've learned about protecting your creative work?" I thought about it. Document everything, I said. But more importantly, don't let fear of theft stop you from creating. The solution to people like unethical actors isn't to hoard your ideas. It's to create so prolifically, so openly, and with such clear attribution that theft becomes impossible to hide. The students filed out, chattering excitedly. Camille lingered. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said. "You're a registered student. I couldn't exactly kick you out. You could have made it uncomfortable. I think you're doing that to yourself." She smiled ruefully. "Fair." She gathered her things, then paused. I wanted you to know I've been reaching out to people. Patricia Williams, the others, acknowledging what I did, trying to make it right. Financial restitution where I can, attribution corrections where I can't. She shrugged. It's destroying what's left of my reputation. But maybe that's the point. Can't rebuild right on a rotten foundation. It was almost exactly what I'd said about her quicksand empire. The fact that she'd internalized it was something, growth, maybe, or just survival adaptation. Good luck with your studies, I said, meaning it. She left, and I returned to my desk where the Riverside plans waited. But my phone buzzed with a text from David Park. Check your email. The email contained a press release. Riverside Development Group was announcing a new initiative, the Attribution Project, an industry-wide commitment to transparent creative crediting. They were partnering with the Design Ethics Institute, which had formed partly in response to my story, to create standardized practices for acknowledging creative contributions. Your presentation started something, Park had written. Let's make sure it continues. I forwarded it to Janet Stein, Marcus, and after a moment's hesitation, to Mom. She'd been trying, in her way, sending articles about siblings who reconciled after conflict. I hadn't responded to most of them. But this felt different. This was about the future, not the past. That evening, I walked through the Riverside site. Construction had begun. My designs taking physical form in steel and glass and growing things. The vertical gardens were just frames now, but I could see what they'd become. The water system trenches carved patterns in the earth like promises of sustainability. My phone rang. Dad. Hey kiddo. Saw the news about the Attribution Project. You did that? I just told the truth. Dad, sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. He paused. Your mother says Camille's back in school. I know. She attended my seminar today. How was that? I considered it like watching someone learn to walk after breaking both legs. He chuckled. You always did have a way with words. Must be why your presentations are so powerful. We talked about easier things, his recovery, my apartment search closer to the office, the tomatoes refusing to grow in Mom's garden. Normal family stuff, carefully skirting the crater where sisterly affection used to be. After we hung up, I stood among the construction chaos, envisioning the community that would grow here, the gardens that would feed neighbors, the spaces where ideas would flourish with proper attribution, the walls that would breathe with truly sustainable innovation. My phone buzzed with another notification. The Design Ethics Summit had posted the speaker lineup. My name was there, right between two industry legends, Layla Monroe, From Theft to Truth, Protecting Creative Innovation in Collaborative Fields. I screenshot it, not from vanity, but from lingering disbelief. 6 months ago, I'd been sleeping in my childhood bedroom, career in ruins, silenced by someone I'd trusted most. Now, I was speaking at conferences, leading groundbreaking projects, and helping reshape how the industry handled attribution. The construction lights flickered on as dusk fell, illuminating the bones of what would become Riverside Commons. My design, my vision, my name on every document and presentation. I thought about Camille in that classroom, finally learning what she should have learned years ago, about Mom, slowly accepting that her daughter's relationship had fundamentally changed, about Dad, proud but sad that success had come at such a price. But mostly, I thought about that voice memo, that accidental gift that had changed everything. Sometimes the universe doesn't hand you justice. Sometimes, it just hands you the tools to create it yourself. I walked back to my car through the construction site, hard hat tucked under my arm, plans for tomorrow already forming. There was so much to build, so much to create, so much to properly attribute. My phone rang again. Sarah from Vermont Life. probably following up about the attribution project. I answered with my new standard greeting, the one that still felt surreal to say, Layla Monroe, lead designer. Because that's who I was now. Not the failed sister or the cautionary tale, not the source material for someone else's success, just Layla Monroe, designer, creator, and owner of my own ideas. The voice memo had started it all, but my voice, my real voice, telling my truth, had finished it. And that was a design that would never be stolen. The story has concluded.